Want to add a little spice to Thanksgiving? Let's paint an easy dabbing turkey that's anything but ordinary. So the first step is we're going to dab a little bit of brown at the bottom of our canvas, a little bit less as we work upwards. And then we're going to grab our white paint, put a little bit, we're going to do the opposite here. We're going to add just a little bit of white at the bottom of our canvas, and we're going to add more as we go up. Basically, if you haven't guessed it, we're going to be creating a gradient. So it's going to be darker at the bottom, and we're just going to be using our flat brush, and we're going to move that paint right across that canvas. So we want a little bit darker at the bottom, and then it's going to get slightly lighter as we move to the middle of the canvas, and then the lightest at the top. And then here too, you can adjust. So if you want it a little bit lighter, add a little bit more white, and if you want it a little bit more darker, add a little bit more brown. If you're working with a canvas that has sides, you're going to go ahead and paint the sides here as well. All right, so once you're happy with your background, we're going to let that dry, and then we're going to come back and add our stencil. Now that our canvas is nice and dry, we're going to transfer on our awesome dabbing turkey right onto our canvas using some transfer paper. So I'm just going to lay that down, dark side down, and then I'm going to put my transfer on top. And then I just like to use some tape to really just make sure it doesn't move on me. All right, now I'm going to take a pencil and I'm just going to trace away. Super simple. And if you want this printable, it's available on my blog, and I'm going to give a link in the description below. All right, now that we're done with our transfer, we're just going to take it off our canvas, and you're going to see our super cool dabbing turkey ready to paint. Okay, so we're just going to pick up some orange paint now, and we're just going to start painting in the turkey's belly with a nice round brush. And I'm going to decide in the last step, because I want this turkey to be nice and edgy, so I want to have it with a nice graffiti feel. So I'm going to see how it looks in the end, and I might end up doing a nice thick black outline around the whole turkey to make it look really graffiti-like, but I'm not sure right now, so I'm going to see at the end of the video how it's all coming together. Okay, and then we're going to do the wings with that orange color too. Super easy when you have a stencil. It's almost like painting by numbers, but much faster, because painting by numbers, you have so many different tiny little details. This you can do in like an hour. So now I'm just going to paint the tail feathers with an orangey brown color. I just mixed a little bit of brown with the orange to get a slightly darker orange. So we're just going to paint all the tail feathers with that darker orange. So I just want to let you know off camera, I added a second coat of orange, and I also added a second coat of that darker orange for the tail feathers. And now what we're going to do is we're going to grab a little bit of light orange, which is orange with white, and we're just gonna do these little sweeping touches in the wings just to give it that look of those feathers. And the paint can blend with the orange below. That's totally fine, or it could be dry as well. Just gonna give a little bit more texture and dimension. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna paint the middle of the belly of our turkey. So to do that, we're gonna grab just a little bit of brown, a little bit of orange, and a little bit of white, and we're gonna create a light beige color. We're just gonna fill that in. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna use that same beige paint that we created, and we're gonna add stripes on our tail feather. Little stripes to give it a little bit of pop of a pattern on our tail feather. So it's just gonna be a stripe like that, and we're gonna do across all the feathers. So now to paint the wattle part, we're just gonna grab some red paint on our brush, our small round brush, and we're just gonna paint that in, easy peasy. And you should see the red should contrast really nicely against that orange. I actually didn't know this part of the turkey was called a wattle. I learn new things every time I make a painting, because I get curious about what I'm painting, and then I end up going on Google and learning something new. And if you want a little bit more contrast with that orange, you can always add a little bit of white into it, but I'm loving this red, so I'm happy with that. The next step, we're gonna paint in the beak and the legs with some yellow paint. But I'm gonna add a little bit of white to my yellow because yellow off the bat is super transparent and it's going to be really see-through. So I'm gonna paint in the beak part with that yellow paint, and then we're gonna paint in the legs too. So now we're gonna paint the turkey sunglasses with a little bit of black, and I'm using my round brush here as well. And also another thing too, with these finer details, it's good to water it down just a little bit. So I'm gonna add a little bit of water to make it really thin, like a kind of like a thick ink. We don't want it like a watercolor, but we want it to be a little bit thicker. The next step, we're going to paint our turkey's hat with a little bit of teal. So I'm grabbing teal with my small round brush, and I'm going to paint in the center part of this hat with that beautiful teal, and the other portion too, that only half of it, because then what we're going to do is we're going to darken it up. So I've just mixed in a tiny bit of black into that teal to make a darker one, and we're just going to paint a darker version of that teal on the side of the cap, just to give a little bit of dimension, because the light is shining right down on the center, and we can blend it a bit too if we want. And I'm going to put it on the other side, and then also along the rim of the hat as well. And then I'm going to come in with that darker teal and then just create those ridges in the hat. 1, 2, create another one here. So I'm just going to take that darker teal paint and I'm going to paint the little details around the hat as well. Now we're going to move right into the running shoes, and we're going to stay with that teal and dark teal. And we're just going to pick up some of that lighter teal color, and we're going to paint in the inside of the running shoes like that. And then we're going to take that darker teal, and it's okay, you don't have to clean off your brush. Just keeps the painting flowing. And then I'm going to pick up some of that lighter teal and do the same thing on the other side. Now we're going to pick up some white paint, and we're going to paint in the side parts of our running shoes with the white. We're going to paint in the tongue of our running shoe, that white as well, and the sole. And then we're just going to repeat the same thing on the other shoe. Now, since we're still working with our white, we're going to go ahead and paint the center of our hat there. And then we're going to keep with that white, and we're just going to add the white reflections in the sunglasses. It really will pop once you add the white in. All right, so I decided that the running shoes were a little bit too white, so I wanted to darken them with the darker teal. So I'm just gonna grab that. But if you like the running shoes as is, then you can just keep it like that. I just felt like I wanted to add a little bit more color to them. So now we're gonna pick up a little bit of black on our detailing brush, and we're gonna add the buttons on our hat. Just little circles. Okay, and then we're gonna add black details on the beak, and finally we're going to add our black details on our running shoes. We're just going to take our black, and it makes it easier if it's watered down a little bit with water. So we're going to do 4 holes in the running shoe, and then we're going to do our laces, which are going to go across like that, and we're just going to make them curve too to go with the curvature of our running shoe. And then I'm going to add in little crisscrosses just to give it more of a realistic kind of look. Our running shoes are complete. All right, so now we're gonna work on the pumpkin. So I'm gonna grab a little bit of that orange, and we're gonna paint in our pumpkin shapes with that orange paint and our small detailing brush. And we're just gonna follow that stencil, doing our best to paint around the shoe. You can get a little tricky, but you can just take your time here. And now we're gonna grab a little bit of brown paint, and I'm gonna paint in the stems of our pumpkin, that, and then the other pumpkin stem, Now I'm going to take some brown paint and add those ridges and blend. So we want that orange of the pumpkin to be still kind of wet so we can blend it a bit, make it look a little bit more realistic. Like that. Do the same thing on the other side, sorry, on the other pumpkin. And finally we're going to do the same thing on the smaller pumpkin. So now I'm just going to take a little bit of that orange again and just apply another coat over top, because that first layer of orange was a little bit translucent. So I want that color to pop a little bit more. So I'm just going over it with a little bit more of that orange. And it's blending with that brown, and that is working out really well because it's going to make it look a little bit more realistic. And we're going to do the same thing on all the pumpkins. So the small one, the medium one, and the big one. Now we're going to paint in our leaf here with orange, but I'm going to tone it down with just a tiny bit of white so it's a little bit lighter. And we're just going to fill that in just to give a little bit more variation to our design, more colors going on. So now I'm just taking some brown paint and I'm going to paint in the stem of this leaf, just like that. All right, now we're going to paint in the leaves, and here you can have fun. You can paint them in any of the colors you have on your palette, or you can even mix them. So for this one over here, I'm going to do that with an orangey brown, and then I'm just going to paint in this leaf here. It's a nice burnt orange that you see in the fall. It's a beautiful orange, right? And then I think I'm going to repeat this color. I really like that one, so I'm going to repeat it up here. I really like that yellow, so I'm going to create a little bit of a darker yellow. So I'll move some yellow over here. I'll grab a little bit of brown to darken it. So I'm going to take some of that darker yellow and I'm going to paint this leaf right over here. I'm going to do another one right over here. And the final two leaves, I want to do them with this blue tone over here, this turquoise tone. So I'm going to take some of that original turquoise for another pile. I don't need very much of it. And then I'm going to take a little bit of white to lighten it up. And then I'm going to paint in this leaf and that leaf with that nice light turquoise color. And then for the thankful at the bottom, we're going to paint that with that small detailing brush. And I'm going to grab a little bit of orange and yellow on my brush, and I'm not going to really mix it really well. I want some orange and yellow kind of streaking through so it looks two-toned. And then we're going to see after this, after we've painted in the thankful, I'm going to take a look at the canvas to see if we're going to outline it with that black to make it look really graffiti. All right, so I did some thinking and I decided that I'm going to put that black outline around our turkey and the pumpkins. So to do that, I'm just using a really thin detailing brush, and I've added a little bit of water to my black paint. And then I'm just going to do some practice strokes just to get a little bit more comfortable with the paint and make sure the paint is the right consistency before I start outlining. The right consistency should feel like the paint is flowing from your paintbrush without you having to press down on it. I'm going to start out here on the side of the turkey. Now, another thing you could do if you're not comfortable doing the outlining with a paintbrush, you can use a paint marker. Paint markers, I find, make it much easier to get these really fine details. So if you have one laying around, a black one, feel free to use that instead. And another thing I like to have when I'm doing these really fine details is a wet Q-tip, because when I make a little bit of a mistake, I can easily wipe it off before it dries. And I'm just going to continue this for the entire turkey, and then we're going to see what it looks like at the end. I'm super excited to see how it's going to turn out. Now, if you're looking for another fun, easy, and time-saving Thanksgiving painting idea, because let's face it, Thanksgiving can get totally busy, you can check out my Thanksgiving gnome tutorial. It's stress-free and it comes with a free stencil like this turkey painting, which makes things super quick and easy. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you had a fun time with this chill dabbing turkey. And as always, sending you lots of peace, love, and color your way. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.